This is Chapter 4, Part 2, Types of Evidence. Chapter 4, Part 2, Lecture Video. Slide 16, Real Evidence. Real evidence is physical evidence that itself plays a direct part in the incident in question. Including physical evidence, it can be demonstrative evidence and tangible evidence. The bottom of page 98 defines real evidence as physical evidence that plays a direct part. Examples of real evidence or physical evidence is on page 99, and you can read that for yourself. It's pretty straightforward. Slide 18, substitutes for evidence, stipulations, judicial notice, presumptions. And that is broken down more. Slide 19, stipulations. That's an agreement between the prosecution and the defense to admit one or more facts of evidence. A lot of times different evidence will be presented and they'll just say they stipulate. That means you don't have to go over it or whatever. It's just stipulated, they allow it in. Stipulations can be written or they can be oral, and they typically are made before the trial, often to simplify or speed up the proceedings. Bottom of page 99 talks about stipulations a little bit more. And see an example of stipulations on page 100. And toward the bottom you'll see examples. Slide 20, judicial notice. That's a procedure where the judge instructs the jury to conclude that a fact exists, and that's under Federal Rules of Evidence 201. It's often used for state law or the content of court records. Bottom of page 100 describes that just a little bit more, and the top of page 101. What am I trying to tell you there? I think I'm looking at commonly known facts refers to facts that are well known in the community, including the scientific community. Slide 21, presumption. That's a legal inference or assumption that a fact exists based on the known or proven existence of some other fact or group of facts. The basic fact is what is necessary to establish a presumption may exist. The presumed fact is what may be assumed if the basic fact exists. Bottom of page 102 of your textbook. When a presumption is involved, the judge instructs the jury to draw a specific conclusion from the facts, and the basic fact must be established in order to use that presumption. Top of page 103 goes into that just a little bit more. Presumed fact is the fact that the judge will tell the jurors they must assume happened if the basic fact is established. Okay. Slide 23, Francis versus Franklin. The defendant was on trial for a capital murder. As a prisoner, he escaped custody and fled to a private residence. The defendant shot through a closed door, killing the deceased when the victim refused to turn over his car. At trial, the defendant's sole defense was that he did not intend to kill. The judge's instruction allowed the jury to presume the intent to kill. The Supreme Court overturned the conviction. Such presumptions cannot be mandatory. In other words, you can't mandatory the jury to assume or presume that the defendant's intent was to kill. That cannot be mandatory. Let's look at slide 24, applying the law mens rea. Traditionally, for a crime, you had to have both the physical act and the mental state of mind. Mental state of mind is mens rea, M-E-N-S-R-E-A. However, it seems we are moving toward an approach of strict liability. Is the intent to commit an act worth keeping in the criminal law? How much impact should intent have on charges, conviction, or punishment? So that's just kind of a probing question that the book's asking. Slide 25, limits on presumptions. There are 3 constitutional limits on presumption. A presumption must be based on a logical assumption rather than mere policy. When used by the prosecution, the basic fact must be established beyond a reasonable doubt. A presumption cannot shift the burden of proof to the defendant. Types of presumption, slide 27. There are 2 general types of presumptions, rebuttal and conclusive. A rebuttal may also be divided into strong and weak. For each, you still need to prove the basic fact before the presumed fact can be considered. Page 104, 105, and 106 talks more about presumptions and rebuttal presumption. Page 105 at the top. In cases in which social policy is strong, conclusive presumption, no one is allowed to refute the existence of the presumed fact, but attacks on the basic fact may be used to avoid conclusion that the presumption directs the jury to draw. When a rebuttal presumption is involved, the opposing side can attempt to disprove either the basic fact or the presumed fact. If you continue to read page 105 and 106, there's an example that helps explain that a little bit better. Slide 28, applying the law, the hidden element. No, we're not going to go over that. That's a discussion board question, I believe. That is the end of chapter 4.